Hello, welcome to Mzansi Oz Diary. Today we're going to talk about the Mzansi exit into back home. And if you don't know, the word Mzansi means South Africa, as you can see from this channel. Morning, South African morning. And so this is a couple that have actually returned back to South Africa. And let's listening in and hear what they have to say about their.
Welcome back. Now I'd like you to take a moment and think about first world countries such as England, New Zealand, Norway, or even Australia. What makes them attractive? They boast fantastic transport infrastructure. There are plenty of economic opportunities for both local and foreign nationals, and crime rates are relatively low, right? But here's the thing. Some South African expatriates living in these so-called perfect countries are choosing to return home. Now, since 2009, a reported 350 to 400,000 South Africans have chosen to come back to Mzansi despite all its social, political, and even economic problems. What could be the...
Yes, that's right. I would argue probably those social and stuff are actually not uniquely South Africans. I would say that it exists everywhere, but let's listening in.
The reason? Well, here's what ENC's contributor Mphola Kaje found out.
It may have taken a while, but she's gradually settling in and finding her rhythm. Antoinette Stolkenkamp is back home in Johannesburg after spending 2.5 years abroad. She and her family left South Africa at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic when local businesses were shutting their doors.
We were running one of the biggest tennis academies in South Africa, and my husband got a good opportunity to go to Sweden and work for one of the top academies in the world. And with South Africa's restrictions, no sport was allowed, so the business basically was really taking strain.
So obviously for them, they were motivated during the COVID, and they moved to Sweden. I remember Sweden didn't have a lot of restrictions. They just went a little bit light on those restrictions, so that's what attracted them to go to Sweden. Let's listen in.
Arriving in Stockholm, Sweden, life became as fantastic as initially expected. But then the reality of living away from the familiarity of home kicked in.
We missed our culture, our heritage, things like Heritage Day, braaiing, everything we've known, everything that is.
Yeah, you'll miss everything. You'll miss even the taste of the meat. I couldn't wait when I went there to South Africa in January to actually have the South African beef tasting. It actually tastes different than the Australian beef. Actually, you do actually. That one, I agree, completely agree on that one.
Us, we missed, and that pulled us home. Definitely, our marriage actually started suffering because you're kind of just existing. You're not living a life. You're just existing in the mundane.
And on the 29th of September 2022, the Stolkenkamps packed up their bags and returned to Johannesburg. But theirs is not an isolated case. In 2018, Chantel Heinrichsen and her family moved to New Zealand and later Australia.
We don't leave the country because of the crime or the load shedding or things like that.
Yes, the elephant in the room, the crime, which is something that all of Australians are interested to asking me about every time when I say I'm coming from South Africa. South Africa's crime is no different than Australia's crime. Obviously, in South Africa is a little bit more comparing to Australia, and also you have to know which areas are much safer to walk, and also always ask the local. The locals will tell you which areas. Just like when I came to Australia earlier in Australia, when we migrated in 2006, and everyone told me stay away from the northern part and very south of Adelaide. You'll be okay. So yeah, so it's no different there. Let's listen again.
We left the country because a golden opportunity was presented to my husband. Because my husband is a qualified electrician, so he qualified on a short skill list.
A thriving career coupled with efficiency in service delivery, life abroad was great. But there's always a catch.
I did feel homesick, especially in New Zealand when we just landed. I cried for the first 2 days because I missed, and I was missing my family, and it was hard.
But when the pandemic struck, the Hendricksons became disillusioned.
COVID had a role to play in us coming back to South Africa. They started.
So another thing we have to be aware as South Africans is that we as South African, our culture is so different than Australian culture, and so we do like to spend time with our family, and we like weekends all about family and gathering and friends, close friends. So if you come here, you're likely not to have enough time to actually have that opportunity to do that with your friends and family. Even if you have friends and family, which now there's a lot of South African communities. Even in Adelaide, there's huge South African communities, and now probably that may not be a factor. It was a factor for me in 2006 to establish that network of South Africans. But even if you do establish a network of South Africans and you get together, you would hardly have time to do it, because I mentioned before that in South Africa, for a middle class family, you're likely to have a lot of assistance, a lot of work, homework you outsource it to. You would have, for example, a housekeeper, you have a gardener, you have all of that to outsource it. So when you actually home, you're actually resting. You're not getting to another work. You're not entering to another, job. So you don't do double job. In Australia, I'll tell my friends and family, if you come to Australia, you're gonna do two jobs. You're middle class South African, you're gonna do two jobs. You're gonna do a job at work and you're gonna do a job at home. So at home in South Africa, you would outsource that because it's cheaper. You can get someone else to actually do that job for you. But in Australia, you would not be able to have that. So it's often you're very stressed. The only time you get rest is when you're sleeping or maybe on the weekend. And if you have kids, then you don't get enough sleep. And maybe your partner may not even be able to go to work because the kids are so young and childcare is expensive. And when you do all that calculation, so when you sit down, you realize that actually it's better for your wife or the spouse to actually not one of you not to work, depending on who earns more. But the maths will come up to the point whereby you feel like, for us to both of us to work, we're paying so much money. We're just paying for that childcare. We're paying for childcare. We're not paying for, having extra money. So, but also you have to also consider that when you are out of workforce for a long time, you also need that opportunity for you to be able to have still retain that skills. That's so important when your kids get older, so you can actually return to a workforce. And that's why I do in this channel advocate for people to consider having an online business so they can run this business at home and improve on their skill set and have at least some kind of skills when they actually try to return to that workforce. And the online business we have at the Thrive Pathway does help you guys for the ability for you to even improve in your current career, but also to explore the business side of the personal leadership programs that we market for the company that we actually are partners that we collaborate with. So it's so important that if you do an expat, or you also if you're just a migrant, consider that if you're at home, consider how you can actually gain new skills so that when your kids get older, you can get into a workforce. So let's listening in for this lady.
Started making the vaccine mandatory.
Chantal Hendrickson and Antoinette Stolkenkamp are among.
So they actually went. Oh my God, South African Zanzi people. Oh dear, 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 dear. Australia because they made vaccine mandatory. Yeah, okay, let's listen in.
Thousands of South Africans who've returned in the last decade or so. There's even a social media group of people either coming back or contemplating to do so. With that said,
I actually like that. I don't need therapy. I just need to go to South Africa. Ah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. No. That's South African humor. Alrighty. Okay, let's listen in.
our country's brain drain cannot be downplayed. According to the United Nations, over 900,000 South Africans currently live abroad.
Yes, that's a lot of them. A couple of weeks ago, my friends and I and the South African community, we gathered together, and all of us there, we were, in healthcare. Majority we're working healthcare workers. That's where your healthcare workers, Mzansi people, are. Okay, we are here. So
It's people who are quite skilled who are going there. So it's your accountants, your engineers, and people in the medical healthcare sector, doctors, nurses. Unfortunately, South Africa is experiencing.
So this is the equivalent of the what do you call it? This Australian new version of Australia now. This is the equivalent of the tent city. This is the tent city, Mukuku. When I say Mukuku, this is what you're looking at right there. That is. I actually think I prefer the tent city because the tent city you can just quickly fold it apart, and when you have visitors, so everybody thinks that everything is nice, looking good in the city. But as you can see, this one, the Mukuku one, it takes a lot of effort. It's look like a permanent structure. People, they can make it within a couple of 2 hours, but it's permanent. You look at that, you have to go and buy those things, corrugated iron, and put them together to make this, and you have to have a foundation. So yeah, it can take it. It depends how efficient the person that's making it is. These days they actually even have people who are actually helping these people to make this type of scenario here. These are people who are unfortunate in our society in South Africa, and in Australia you still have that. South Africans, you still have people who are homeless. There are 10 cities, and so don't get mixed up and think that everything is nice, looking good. Like I said to you, nothing, all of this stuff they're portraying out there for you to get to Australia, it's actually wrong. I said that to my cousin when I saw them, that actually it's a good idea because I'm going to start a channel called Mzansi Oz and try and tell you guys that this is not what people are telling you. This is not what these recruiters are telling you, because they want health workers. And the problem that I have with that is that they want workers, overseas workers, and when they get these workers, they don't give them opportunity to actually move with their skill set. They remain at that bottom layer, and in the so-called help, I call them the help, because they never will actually reach to their capacity to move up in the ladder as you would if you've had so much experience in your role, whether you're a nurse, your physio, your pharmacist, whoever, doctors, you should be able to have an opportunity to be able to move from that role. If you remain in the stagnant position there in this for years, you are nothing but the help. And that's the beef I have with actually the workforce and in general in the workplace in Australia, is that there isn't enough movement for people of color, for people of diverse background, migrants. They remain there. For migrants to be able to earn any same income, they would need to work extra job in the same profession. For example, if you're a nurse, you would have your job at the X hospital and you work there, and then for you to be able to earn extra money, you would need to actually consider doing locums elsewhere. So if you do welcome elsewhere, at least then you can have extra money. But then that actually, you're not looking after your health and well-being. You need to actually have a rest. So that's the way you can actually earn an income. So for example, I have extra businesses. I have professional leadership online businesses. You would think, why wouldn't I not actually work in the same profession, my physiotherapy profession, and remain in that and actually be able to, earn an income with so many experience I've had? That's the question you'd ask, right? And so that is something that I'm seeing in Australia for migrants, and this is a familiar scenario here. And question needs to be asked: what is Australia needing migrants for? What is the purpose for migrants in Australia if they're not given the full opportunity of become profession in the areas that they of their interest? That is a big question I have, and I would like you guys your comments about how you feel about this session. We're talking about this issue right now. Okay, let's listen in to the South African who just returned to South Africa.
A number of problems. The government acknowledges that there is the triple challenge, which is poverty, unemployment, as well as inequality.
Yes, so unemployment, it's very high in South Africa. However, it's higher in people who are unskilled. Skilled workforce in South Africa, then the unemployment is probably nothing, zero, because it'll be around 2 point something percent. Okay, so this unemployment, you need number is in the details where it's located. In actually in low skilled workers, the unemployment is so high. Hence, this we saw that during the election, one of the major key issues of the Patriotic Alliance was that there's a lot of migrants who are undocumented in South Africa. I think the estimates it's about 15 million. Okay, economic migrants. So you can understand why ANC lost after 30 years. Okay, there's no longer this generation weren't going to tolerate this level of poverty that's actually driven by porous border, uncontrolled borders, and so that actually led to this, hung parliament. And I think, yeah, it is a turning point in South African political system, because people are now looking for action. They're looking for results. You cannot allow so many undocumented migrants to live in your country and compete. And what happened is that you'll have a lot of businesses that would hire and exploit these migrants by paying them less than minimum wage. South Africa is similar to Australia. They've got minimum wage. They would actually pay them less than minimum wage. Some of them are exploited. For example, there was a documentary where they were saying that one of the businesses in construction, they would hire these migrants who are documented, and when it's time to pay them, they'll call the police. Because when they see the police, they would run away and not get paid, because they knew that if the police will come in, they will ask them their citizenship status and all of that, then they'll run away. Therefore, what that means is that they wouldn't get paid. And that was exploitation, example of how they're getting exploited. So it is, it was a big issue, and in my view, and what I think that one was actually the number two thing. The first one was the load shedding. The second one was actually this migration issue. Let's listen in.
Even if some want to come back home, issues of tax add a layer of complication.
You also need to consider what's your intention. Are you just leaving for a couple of years? How much are you going to be earning? Is it employment, income, or are you going to set up a business offshore? That's factors that you need to consider when you leave the country. If you didn't go through these processes, yes, there's certainly a fear from a non-compliance perspective of returning to South Africa.
Yes, and some of you also would have lost your citizenship, and I think that law actually was, I don't know what's the status of that law. People who actually acquired Western citizenship and then and did not actually inform the Home Affairs that they were acquiring that citizenship, I think they would have lost their citizenship. But I think you can actually request it back. There's some processes, or it was actually amended for somehow. I don't know. You guys can look it up, but the status of that. But I knew that yeah. Lucky for me, I actually looked it up, so I went in and request that they actually retain my citizenship and do not take my citizenship away. And so I'm a dual citizen of both countries, South Africa and Australia. So I'm actually proudly South African.
But of course, that's just half of the picture. While South Africa is, without a doubt, facing a mountain of challenges, it remains attractive to some of its expatriates and the global community at large. Just this year alone, aviation companies like Air Belgium, Emirates, and United Airlines either launched new routes or expanded their operations here.
The global north gravitates towards SA. SA is an ideal area to invest in. Compared to other countries in the region, you will note that
Yeah, because it's a little bit, it's more democratic, it's more stable countries. We do not have any issues with elections, violence. Some people are expecting, oh, they're going to be violence. We never have a violence election in South Africa. We had a peaceful transfer from apartheid to now with no violence, civil war, nothing. So South Africans are peaceful people. We do not like violence. So it's just one of those unfortunate myths that people who want to see that sort of division to happen and stoke that, but it's not something it's familiar in South Africa to have violence, that is associated with elections. But there were issues that were violence a while ago that was to do with the MK party, the Zuma who was put in jail. That was not election related. It was related to their groups and everything who are writing about him being put in jail for good reasons. Yeah. So, no, elections peaceful. We have a democratic society. South Africa is one of the fifth countries that actually legalize marriage for people who are gay, lesbians. There's no gender diverse people are all part of South African society. So there was no way that constitution would make it, legal to actually discriminate against people of different sexual orientation. So that's one of the factor as well that you guys need to consider. We are South Africa is a democratic society. So
the country is quite favorable. The recent visit of the president to England, there were discussions around how SA is, an ideal place to do business. It's acknowledged.
Also, tourism numbers are up by 500,000, 3 times more than the same period last year. But most importantly, South Africans coming back home tend to discover that their money goes a long way here.
Oh yes, absolutely. I'm actually been looking at some of the investment around in South Africa. So been can't wait to get back there and to put more money into investing a lot there, because I think the property in South Africa, they're so underrated and so cheap, as you've seen the other two that I showed you, the last post that I made. And also not just properties, there's a lot of investment opportunity in these BRICS countries. So for people who are frugal, who really likes investment business, this is your things that you need to look at other markets
Than it does abroad.
People will sit down, draw up comparisons looking at salaries, and assume that the rand equivalent in that country would get them what it would get them here in South Africa. And it would be a route.
Yeah, that's right. So I told you that right now in 2024, I think if you're a physiotherapist in Australia, well, in South Australia, for example, it's the salary for physiotherapists is the one it's range between 80 to 110,000. Let's say it's 110,000 per year. Okay, so I told you that that money wouldn't qualify a house to buy a house. That money wouldn't qualify you to get a house in Adelaide. Um, yeah, if you are a migrant, you're not from a wealthy family, and you didn't have any assets, it will take you, I think, yeah, a lot of years to save so that you can actually get into the property market. So hence here, a lot of people who are Australians are getting help by their parents who are wealthy, or parents will take a second mortgage or extend their mortgages to help their kids to get into the property market. So they call that bank of mom and dad. So in South Africa, that process of doing that, of helping your family member, it's called the black tax, because that is used mainly by a black community in South Africa, because they were heavily affected by apartheid system. So many of them are poor, and therefore one of them, if one of them is a middle class, will then help their brother or sister, their mom, whoever who is with getting them a property or getting them with the basic needs. But often they do that after their income, after having paid that tax. That's why it's called black tax, because you work and you get taxed, you get your income, then you have to help your family members. So in Australia, the term is called Bank of Mom and Dad, because these are people who are parents who are helping their kids. But in South Africa, it's called black tax, because it's much more common within the black community because of the lack of wealth around during to the exclusion into actually participating into South African economy during the apartheid system. So that is something that you guys be aware that that term you might use it into, yeah, it's used differently in South Africa, but it still imply that family members who are successful and wealthy are helping other family members. In Australia, it's parents helping the kids. In South Africa, it could be a successful son who's helping their parents, who's helping their brothers, but it's often in a black family, in the black community, and therefore they've termed that that process as a black tax. Black tax, okay? Okay, let's listen.
Good awakening when one gets overseas and they realize that the quality of life changes. They can't afford to drive the car that they were driving in South Africa. They can't afford to live the kind of life they were living here.
Yep, you can't afford to have a housekeeper 24 hours. Where would you put a housekeeper in that shoebox house? You hardly be lucky to find an affordable property that has two bathrooms. Okay, two bathroom, which is the minimum bathroom you'll find in the middle class South African homes. You're highly pressed to find that. So you Mzansi people who are listening to me, you need to be prepared for this. This is not for you not to come and explore Australia or other you need to travel, but you also need to be realistic. And I think what you've been told is a lie. So
It is now up to the government, the private sector, and ordinary South Africans to capitalize on South Africa's strengths to continue attracting or retaining skilled people. Polagaje, Johannesburg.
Yes, as you have heard, I do think you guys, if you are considering doing that, you need to plan. And the online opportunity is the game changer for me, and I think it could be benefit for some people, not for everyone, of course. That's why you need to evaluate this situation and see how this can benefit you. And even today I just heard that a lot of people actually are having trouble actually paying for their mortgages. We're likely, even now with the interest rate so about lower 4.35 cash rate in Australia, people are still that people are struggling to pay for it. And I think it's still low because we saw that the inflation is still going to go higher anyway. So if you're one of those people and you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, how can I actually have an additional income if you're not planning to move abroad to do other things? It's certainly, I think, flexibility for working online for young families and people who are who are working in healthcare, because this is the leadership programs and helps people around the health and well-being, and also you have a potential to actually start your own business as well, and be offered a training through these programs. So if you're interested, the link is at the top of this channel. You just go to a Facebook page, and that when you get to a Facebook page, you need to fill out a form, and then we can contact you, just have a chat with you. We're not taking everyone, of course. We want to make sure that you're the right person to become an associate in our company, and so it is a business interview. Make sure that you take it as such and express your we'll ask you some questions, and so if we feel like you're not going to be the right candidate, we'll tell you. So guys, just consider about what I just told you. I know many of you migrants are in your profession for many years. You haven't seen yourself going up into the ladder. Normally you should. If you've had so much experience in the same role, you should be able to be the expert in your field and be the person that actually responsible. But I don't know whether it's intentional, it's your choice that you actually allow yourself to be treated as a help in your profession. But if you, it's just consider that. Don't become a help. Be a skilled person in your role where you are, and with a person you're there to contribute your expertise. And if you're in an environment where you couldn't do that, you need to look for a platform that can allow you to provide services at your capacity, to work at your capacity, where you're not going to be influenced by anybody, especially if you're a skilled person. I can understand if you're an intern or you're a new person because you need to be supported. We've all been there. Everybody needs to start somewhere. But I think after 2 years in the role, if you haven't got a raise, you need to consider looking at other opportunities. There's plenty of them out there. Okay? Thank you guys for listening. Have a lovely day.